Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a hypothesis that, well, it really flips the script on how we view our own evolutionary history.
It absolutely does.
We're not just going to explore what our ancestors ate, we're going to look for the biological proof that for 2 million critical years, the driving force behind our genus, Homo, was a specialized predatory diet.
It's a total restructuring of the narrative. This is the hyper-carnivore hypothesis, and it's pretty controversial. It argues our whole evolutionary path was a radical departure from other primates.
So we didn't just become occasional meat eaters.
No, not at all. The argument is that we systematically transitioned into a hyper-carnivorous apex predator. And this wasn't, a temporary thing. It was our defining niche for a colossal amount of time.
2 million years of specialized predation. And the result, according to these sources, is that we emerged as a super predator.
Yeah, a species so effective, it basically reorganized global biodiversity. It changed the architecture of every ecosystem it walked into.
What I find so compelling is the approach here. We're moving past the usual modern analogies.
Right, like looking at modern hunter-gatherers.
Yeah.
The problem is, those groups operate in ecosystems that are already drastically depleted.
And they have technology like steel, firearms, things that just weren't part of the Pleistocene picture. They're not great models.
Exactly. So instead, the focus is on treating the body itself as a kind of fossil record. We're looking for what's called the biological memory.
The proof preserved in our metabolism, our genes, our anatomy, the stuff that tells us what we had to be doing to survive. Okay, let's unpack this.
Where to start?
Let's start where the challenge of eating meat really begins, the digestive system. What's the biggest physiological marker for this hypercarnivorous past?
It has to be the stomach. Specifically, its acidity. This is one of the most energetically expensive things our body does, maintaining that extreme pH.
How extreme are we talking?
Well, the human stomach pH is approximately 1.5.
1.5. That number sounds abstract, so what does it mean in, practical terms? Especially when you compare us to our closest relatives.
It means we're maintaining a stomach environment that's honestly closer to battery acid than a typical mammal's gut.
Wow.
Yeah. Other primates, who are mostly eating plants or are generalist omnivores, they typically have a gastric pH way above 3.0, often much higher.
So producing and maintaining a pH of 1.5 must burn an enormous amount of metabolic energy.
It does. And that only makes sense if there was some critical, unavoidable biological need for it.
So if that's so costly, who else in the animal kingdom actually bothers to keep a stomach that acidic?
You find this level of acidity in two very specific groups, obligate scavengers and hypercarnivores.
Like what?
Think about animals that are just optimized for handling decay, vultures and hyenas. Their gastric pH is also intensely acidic, right in that 1.0 to 2.0 range.
That is a powerful comparison. It implies the acid wasn't just for efficient digestion. It was a weapon,
Right?
Anti-pathogen weapon.
Exactly. It functioned as an essential ecological filter. It was protection against necrobacteria and high-load foodborne pathogens.
Because early hominins were initially engaged in what's called power scavenging, right?
Yes, securing large, maybe days-old carcasses from the kills of other predators. That meat would have been aged, carrying huge bacterial loads.
And even after we started hunting for ourselves, hunting these huge megafauna, a single kill could feed a group for weeks.
Right, so the meat naturally underwent decomposition while they were still eating it. The stomach had to be able to handle that.
So our bodies were physically adapted to safely process what was essentially rotten meat for extended periods. That fact alone really pushes back against the idea we were just casual generalists.
It defines us as specialized meat processors. We paid a huge metabolic price for that function, which tells you meat wasn't just a supplement. It was the core diet driving our evolution.
It's amazing. But if we were eating that much meat, surely we would run into a metabolic wall somewhere else. There must be a limit.
We did. And this is where the crucial importance of fat comes in. We are absolutely defined by severe biological limitation known as the protein ceiling.
This is the danger known to old explorers as rabbit starvation.
Precisely. The sources explain that our liver has a limited capacity to convert ammonia, which is a toxic byproduct of protein metabolism, into urea so we can excrete it.
And if you eat too much lean protein, you overwhelm that system.
You do. If you consume more than, say, about 35% of your total calories from lean protein, you risk hyperammonemia, which can be fatal.
So to survive as hypercarnivores, our ancestors couldn't just eat lean muscle. They required significant amounts of animal fat.
Absolutely. It was a requirement. This biological imperative changes the entire picture of Pleistocene hunting. It wasn't about securing just any calories, it was about getting a very specific nutrient package,
So they were driven to target the largest creatures, the megafauna.
specifically for their vast subcutaneous and visceral fat deposits. Lean muscle was, in a way, secondary.
And that explains why certain parts of the carcass were so prized. It wasn't just the meat itself.
No, it was the high-energy concentrated lipids. Yeah. Bone marrow, which the smashing tools give us clear evidence for.
And brain tissue.
Yes, with its essential lipid content, which was critical for our massive brain development. And, of course, the thick layers of subcutaneous fat. That was the primary caloric driver. They weren't just hunting for survival. They were hunting for fat.
We can even see this specialization mirrored in how our own bodies store energy today. Tell us about the fat cells.
It's a brilliant piece of biological memory. If you look at human adipose tissue, we store fat in a large number of small fat cells, or adipocytes.
And that's different from other animals.
It's very different from many generalist omnivores, like bears or pigs. They tend to have a smaller number of large, slow-to-access fat cells.
So our fat storage architecture is more like a specialized predator's.
It is. That structure allows for really rapid lipid mobilization and storage. When a hunt succeeded, you needed to absorb and store massive caloric wealth quickly.
And when it failed, you needed to access that energy just as fast.
It's a physiological setup that's perfectly optimized for the intense feast and famine cycles of a top-level predator.
That is powerful evidence, all drawn from inside our own bodies. But here's the paradox, isn't it? A creature evolved to process rotting meat and store huge amounts of fat, but one that lacks the basic equipment. No fangs, no claws, not nearly fast enough.
And that paradox is what makes the cognitive part of this so fascinating. How did a relatively weak, slow primate climb to the absolute apex position?
We needed a technological externalization. The source is called tools, extrasomatic organs.
Correct. Tools weren't just helpful little aids, they were our technology.
Yeah.
They projected force and managed the huge risk of confronting prey that was many, many times our size. They were our claws and our fangs.
And you can trace this evolution of lethality right through the archaeological record. But hold on, what about those early tool screams, predator versus just forager?
It's the shift in efficiency and in intent. Oldowan tools, around 2.6 million years ago, they're simple choppers. They tell us our ancestors were mostly concerned with breaking bones to get at marrow, scavenge lipids. But by 1.75 million years ago, the Acheulean symmetrical hand axe appears. This required planning, foresight, standardization. It signals systematic butchery.
And coordination. You don't need a finely crafted hand axe for a rabbit.
Exactly. You need to process large kills in a standardized, rapid way, which suggests a whole group working together.
But the real game changer, the thing that drastically reduced the danger for hunters, that comes much later.
That's the Middle Stone Age, about 300,000 years ago, with the invention of hafted projectile technology.
So spears you can throw.
Yes. Before that, you had a thrusting spear, which meant dangerous, close-quarters combat with huge, angry animals. The injury and mortality rates must have been extremely high.
And what did projectile technology change?
It created distance. It was a safety buffer. Projectile points allowed humans to kill reliably and lethally from a distance. That single invention, that technological firewall, it fundamentally secured our place at the top by lowering the risk.
Our technology gave us the edge.
A decisive tactical edge over every other terrestrial hunter.
So technology provided the fangs and claws. But dealing with a massive kill site, especially in the Pleistocene, that posed another immediate problem: competition.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine bringing down a mammoth. You've got tons of fatty wealth just lying there. Every powerful competitor, from giant hyenas to saber-toothed cats, is going to be drawn to that scent.
And this is where fire becomes more than just a cooking tool.
This is where fire provides a crucial barrier of fear.
Right, a barrier against animals that were otherwise perfectly capable of just taking the kill from us.
Yes. While the group was processing that kill, fire was a psychological and physical deterrent. But fire also did something else that was vital for this diet. It links back to that feast and famine metabolism.
Preservation.
Using fire to smoke and dry meat allowed for the long-term storage of that fatty wealth. It finally decoupled human nutrition from the immediate, high-risk success of a single hunt.
This level of organization, killing massive animals, defending the kill site, it requires massive cooperation. It really shifts the focus from an individual strength to a complex social machine.
Hunting megafauna is inherently a communal, high-stakes thing. We see archaeological evidence, for instance, at Grandolina in Spain, that points to catastrophic kill sites, sometimes targeting entire herds of bison.
That's not opportunistic, that's strategy.
Highly organized social structures, capable of complex maneuvers.
And the sources really emphasize that the core strategy was cognitive. It was about using smarts over speed, not just persistence hunting.
That's a key finding. If we were just relying on persistence hunting, you'd expect the archaeological record to show we mostly targeted the old, the injured, the very young, the easy target.
The ones other predators focus on.
Exactly. But instead, the bone piles often show the targeted animals were young adults in their prime. That suggests a reliance on cognitive strategy, ambush, environmental traps, coordination. They were securing the highest quality prey.
Our intelligence, armed with our technology and social structure, basically rewrote the rules of predation.
It did.
So what does this massive 2 million-year specialization mean for the world our ancestors inherited when they finally expanded out of Africa?
It means we left a profound, indelible mark. The sources detail the ecological legacy of this lifestyle, especially as Homo sapiens went global. There's a clear chronological coincidence between human arrival on a new landmass and widespread megafaunal extinction.
And this wasn't just random extinction, it was uniquely size-biased.
Precisely. It specifically targeted animals over 1,000 kilograms. Look at the figures. When humans got to Australia, something like 86% of the large genera disappeared rapidly.
And in the Americas.
The rates were around 72% to 83%, sometimes called a blitzkrieg extinction, a rapid collapse of these large, naive fauna that just hadn't evolved alongside human hunters.
The ecological fallout from losing those giants must have been immense.
It fundamentally reshaped the planet. The megafauna were nutrient pumps, constantly moving minerals across landscapes. Their removal meant the disappearance of the megafauna trap, which was the constant grazing pressure that kept grasslands open.
So the landscape itself changed.
Woody vegetation encroached, which altered fire regimes, sunlight penetration. It reduced biodiversity in ways that affect the biosphere even today. The hunter became the ecosystem architect.
Okay, now fast forward to the present. We're obviously not hyper-carnivores in that ancestral sense anymore, but the sources argue that the modern human niche is one of superpredation. How is that different?
The difference is really about sustainability and selection. We can use a measure called the human trophic level, or HTL. It puts us on the food chain, where 5.0 is a pure apex predator like a lion.
And our ancestral peak HTL is what, around 4.0 to 5.0?
Yeah, true apex predators.
So where are we now?
And the modern global median HTL is about 2.21.
That's a huge drop.
It is, and that decline was necessary for the massive human population explosion. You lose less energy when you eat lower on the food chain. That 2.21 is driven by the fact that 80% of our global calories now come from plants and grains. We stepped way down the ladder.
But despite eating mostly plants, the sources still call us a super predator. So where does that term come from?
It comes from how we hunt and fish today. Modern super predators, using high technology, preferentially target the largest, healthiest, reproductively critical adults, whether in trophy hunting or commercial fishing.
We're taking the biggest and best.
Ecologists call it consuming the capital instead of living off the interest. We remove the very individuals that are most crucial for a population's recovery.
And we eliminate our competition, too.
At alarming rates, we are the predator of predators.
Yeah.
Humans kill terrestrial carnivores at rates up to 9 times higher than those predators kill each other.
And that causes these massive ripple effects, like mesopredator release.
Exactly. You get rid of the wolves, the coyotes thrive. They then proceed to devastate smaller prey populations, like ground-nesting birds, creating these trophic cascades across the whole ecosystem. Our modern pattern isn't balanced. It's destabilizing.
It's clear our lethality remains, even if our diet has shifted. Which brings us to the final and maybe most provocative piece of evidence for our enduring apex status, the modern landscape of fear.
This is probably the most humbling data in the sources. A landmark study in Kruger National Park measured how wildlife responded to different sounds.
And what did they find?
They found that 95% of savanna mammals show a significantly stronger fear response to the sound of human conversation than they do to the roars and snarls of lions.
Wait, the sound of two people just talking is objectively more terrifying to African wildlife than the sound of a lion.
Animals were twice as likely to flee. They abandoned waterholes 40% faster when they heard human voices. Think about that. Even huge animals like elephants and rhinoceroses, animals that will stand their ground against a lion.
They fled upon hearing people.
That pervasive fear indicates a deep evolutionary recognition that humans represent a unique lethal threat. a threat for which no animal has evolved a counter-strategy. Our predatory past is just. It's immutable.
And that biological memory, optimized over 2 million years, is what drove our development. But the modern super predator model, where technology eliminates all risk and we consume the planet's reproductive capital, that's unsustainable.
It is. And the final thought for you to consider is this. The ancient hunters' success came from using cognitive flexibility to plan years ahead for fat reserves and group coordination. Transitioning to a sustainable niche now will require us to leverage that exact same flexibility. But this time is to apply restraint and foresight to preserve the trophic diversity that our ancestors, in their own success, inadvertently began to decimate.